tip number 4, if you have limited time, set the portion on when will you entertain the questions. So if you notice, this was one of my answers a while ago during our live Q&A. It is also one of my favorite topics about managing meetings or sessions. If you attended our webinar on how to manage large audiences, how to manage virtual audiences, it is always one of my tenets when it comes to managing time. So you have two options. Option number 1 that I recommend, ask the participants to send their questions in advance. And here's where you put the puzzle pieces together. This is even more effective if you have sent them a pre-read deck via email or via instant messenger. And then tell them questions will be addressed in the presentation. Why is it important? Because if the question is going to be answered anyway in the presentation, you don't need to spend time answering it. You will only be redundant, and that will eat up your time. So I'll give an example. A while ago when we have a live Q&A, I knew that my answer was related to tip number 4. I wanted to be polite, however, and so I still answered the question. But offhand, technically, I knew that my answer was going to be the same as tip number 4. In real life situations, when I'm conducting a meeting, I will not answer the question. I will say instead, thank you for that question. Take note that I will address that later on in my slide number 8. Or you can say, thank you for that question. I am happy that you're able to anticipate that. And take note, or don't worry, that will be covered in my slide number 4. Right? So the more questions you have in advance, the more you give people that faith that they will be addressed during the meeting. So be prepared. Gather the questions in advance and tell them all of the questions that you have raised are now integrated in my slides. This way, when you have the real Q&A in the end, you give more time for other questions that have not been raised or not been thought of by the participants at all. Okay, so that's option number 1. Option number 2, at the beginning of the meeting, and again, I'm going to sound like an old record here, ask the participants to reserve their questions during the allotted portion to avoid interruption. That is layer number 1. What is layer number 2? If you didn't have enough time to cover all questions, when you end the meeting, tell them, by the way, here is my email address and my phone number. For those specific questions that I was not able to address, you may contact me personally for a one-on-one meeting, or I can spare 5 or 10 minutes in this room because we still have more time, and I can entertain your questions privately. Right? Can I get an exclamation mark if we are learning something about that? So there is a way to not sound or appear rude that you are avoiding questions, but also you're reminding people that you have to balance everyone's interest. Yes, I want to answer your question, but I also have to manage the time. Yes, your question is important, but other people's questions are also important. So we have to be as fair with the treatment of time as much as possible.